Good afternoon all. Welcome to our Digital ACE webinar on developing materials and resources. We have got one of our board members, Aranola Ede, who is Head of Service at Westminster Adult Education Service. She's going to be hosting the webinar for us today. And Caroline Miller, who was the lead at Newcastle Sitting Learning, but she's recently retired and she's been leading this strand for us. And then Caroline's going to be joined hopefully by a couple of other people to talk through some case studies later on. So Caroline, if you can flip to the housekeeping slide. So hopefully you can all hear me. If you can hear us but you can't see the presentation and you've downloaded the app, you may see a little daisy symbol at the bottom of your toolbar. If you click that, hopefully it will all pop up and appear. Or if you lose a menu at any time, you should be able to do that. If you can't see menu options, such as where I'm going to ask you to send me chat or questions, then there might be a little orange arrow on a tiny little toolbar. If you click the arrow, it should expand the other options. And if you're having issues with audio, which you may not hear me say this, but you can hopefully read on the screen if you can see, there is an option to dial in via a phone call. And if you click the phone call button, you should get a number to dial. And then finally, if you want to pop any questions through, please do, and we'll try to keep an eye on them during the session, and Aranola will be doing some Q&A later on. There should be a little questions panel, so if you can just maybe, if you'd like to send me a test question, if you want to try it out, then please do. And I'm going to hand over now to Aranola to tell you a little bit about the project. Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction, Charlie. Good afternoon, everyone, and as Charlie said, welcome to the third in the series of our Digital ACE project webinars. It's great that so many of you can actually join us this afternoon. As we all know, the last 6 months have been a real eye-opener for us all. The way we work, live, and interact with one another has changed monumentally. COVID-19 has a lot to answer for, some of it quite strange, like the news from across the pond, but in other areas, extremely positive, like enabling this project to happen. During lockdown, most providers were doing what they could to accelerate the development of digital skills for their staff to support online working, but also for their learners to support online learning. And the Digital ACE project, delivered by HOLEX and funded by the UFI VocTech, will help us as providers to build on and enhance that work that we have already started. It's enabled us to thoroughly review and collate best practice and the recommendations across all key areas of online provision in our sector. It's been developed for us, by us, and has been designed to support us all as adult and community education providers, just to ensure that, you know, as we embrace the fourth industrial revolution, our technological journey is one that feels well supported and focuses on what works and helps us to actually develop those digital capabilities. Some of us will be further along than others, and that's okay. We're here to support each other on this journey. And there are 6 strands, you know, to the project. I'm not going to take up too much time by listing them because, more importantly, I want you to visit the HOLEX website and actually see all the fantastic resources that are going to be hosted there. After each webinar, we will actually upload the resources and a recording of the webinar so that you have access to it if you're unable to actually make it. So as Charlie said, today's webinar is all about developing materials and resources. And based on the number of people that actually signed up for this, it must definitely be one of the most important ones. So we're going to hear first from Caroline Miller, who led the team that worked on this strand of the project. And then hopefully we'll hear real case studies from a couple of other people who also in the adult education sector. So I'm going to hand over to Caroline now to actually take us through the strand and how they actually worked on this aspect of the project. Over to you, Caroline.
Hi, Aranola. Thank you very much. And welcome to everyone. It's quite humbling, really, to see just how many people have taken an interest in this strand. And certainly, I've found it a really exciting piece of work to get involved with, and it's been great fun. The purpose of this afternoon really is to provide you with an overview of the materials and resources strand, to try and build your confidence, to perhaps try out some new ideas, and to provide you with some advice to the sector from the sector. But I do have to say there is a lot of material in the guidance. So the webinar is really a gallop through what we've included. you'll need to take a bit more time out to really get to grips with it. So what I'm hoping for this afternoon is to provide you with a quick overview and some inspiration to find out more, to understand a little bit more. And I'm absolutely thrilled that I'm going to have Sarah Bradley from Buckinghamshire and Carol Kennett from Manchester here to share some of their experiences. So this strand, what does it include? It includes some action planning for the development of digital resources. It looks at digital knowledge and skills, both of staff and of learners. We look at legal and accessibility requirements, some models of online and blended learning, how to use videos effectively in teaching and learning, some stuff about collaborative tools, feedback and feed forward for learners, and some subject specific and other resources that we've been able to collate and share for you. So how did we develop the strand? Well, as we've mentioned, there was a working group, which if you've been on the other webinars, you'll know that all of the strands have involved a working group. I was absolutely thrilled because I had 10 people from across the sector who were really proactive in giving me advice and support and pulling together materials and case studies and so on. We set up a Microsoft team to communicate and collaborate. I surveyed them, got some broad outline information and pulled that together into a Padlet, which if you don't know what it is, have a link through from the resources later on and you'll find out what it is. We then refined all of that, drafted the report, and my group were able to comment and feedback to me all the way through. We've researched lots of existing advice and materials, but also drawn on the knowledge and experience of your colleagues through a variety of case studies, which are real experiences. They might be good, they might be bad, and they might be indifferent, but they're people's real experiences. The team has been incredibly generous in sharing materials that they are happy for you to use as they are, or to adapt and develop for to make them into your own. But I think that's been incredibly generous of them. So I'm going to talk much more at the end about how to use the guidance document. But it provides you with lots of information and resources to get started. Inevitably, some of you will say, well, it doesn't include this or it doesn't include that. Actually, we could have carried on writing for a year and not got anything out to you. And not every idea or suggestion will be useful to every situation. And I think if I wanted you to take one thing away, it would be that there are no right answers. Just because something works in one setting and one provider and one scenario doesn't mean it will work elsewhere. This is really about exploration and finding out what works for you individually, either as a service or as an individual practitioner. So that's really, I think, my takeaway message in terms of that. Legal matters. Well, to be honest, I'm not going to dwell on these hugely, but I did think it was important to mention this. There are legal responsibilities and requirements that every one of us has in terms of general data protection regulations, accessibility, and copyright. There are if you don't know what those rules and requirements are, there are links to all of those in the document. But I don't really want to say much more about what those are. I think it's your responsibility really to know what the rules are. They apply to all of us, and so you need to understand them. But what I have got is a little cautionary tale, and I'm not going to just read this out. This is an experience of a tutor in a local authority adult education service who was quite diligent about things, thought they understood all of the requirements of copyright, and taught a range of subjects, including ICT, does work with cookery and learners with learning difficulties as well, and was planning for a course on the virtual learning environment, needed an image, searched on Google, thought that it had no copyright watermarks, anything, downloaded it, added it to the resources, uploaded it, nothing, didn't think about it again. And I bet all of us have done that and thought we were okay. Some years later, he got a message from the college to say that they'd been contacted by an organisation claiming copyright infringement and discovered that indeed this image was the one that they were referring to, and that there was a fee for having used it, and that the requirement was to remove the image. So as a result, realised that perhaps he wasn't sufficiently aware of what those copyright rules were, and brought in an expert actually from the Business Intellectual Property Centre to give him some resources, and he facilitated the workshops. One of the really good things is that the person who developed those resources for him has updated them for us for the project, and they will be included in the annexes that you receive. So if you're not quite sure about copyright, or you think you knew about it and this is making you wonder whether you did, there are a detailed set of slides that you can use with her supplementary notes underneath, and it has been just updated. So I thought it would be interesting to have a poll to find out what you thought. So I'm going to let, yeah, it's open.
You can vote now, everybody. I will nip in here quickly, Caroline. So how confident are you that your staff understand copyright in full and have not made the same mistake as this tutor? So are you very confident, a little confident, unsure, or not confident? How are you all feeling about it? Do you think that your staff understand copyright enough so they wouldn't have made the same mistake as this tutor, or do you think they could have made the same mistake? So if you've not voted yet, if you get your votes in, and I'm going to, we've got 82% of you voted, so I'm going to close the poll now and I will share the results with you. So you're mostly in the middle. We've got 41% of you a little confident, 36% of you unsure, and 20% of you there not confident. We've got 3% of you, well done you guys, who are very confident that your staff are sure, but I think a lot of us would be in that same position. I'll hand it back to you now, Caroline.
Yeah, thank you. That's really interesting. And I think, you know, I would have myself said that I was pretty confident about it, but clearly I wasn't. Oh, I've got the wrong version of the slides, but never mind. It shouldn't be a question mark saying Sarah Bradley. At this point, I'd like to welcome Sarah Bradley, who is going to talk a bit about staff digital knowledge and skills. And I'm sure Sarah will tell me, oh, hang on. Oh, I'm in the wrong, I've got the wrong slides. Oh, that's a disaster. Particularly I'm on the wrong computer.
Caroline, would you like me to find the slides on my machine if I can? Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. Bear with me a second, everybody.
Those of you who I was trying to look really cool. I've had a technological nightmare today. Absolute technological nightmare. And somehow managed.
Okay, bear with me, people. I am just opening these on my machine
I'm really
now.
sorry. Right.
I'm just going to take the presentership back off Caroline and share them. Okay.
Yes, for those of you who don't know,
Anybody
Charlie
see
and
that?
I have spent most of the day connected trying to sort the problems out.
Okay, can everybody see the front page of those slides? Can anybody see the front page of the slides?
I can.
The only problem is I have currently lost them on my screen. Oh gosh, hang on a minute. Okay, so I can see that front screen, but I am not currently able to flip through it for some reason, and I don't know why.
Right, I might be able to sort my problem out.
Sarah, do you have a copy of your slides that you could speak to without them being technically in front of you at all?
Yes, I've got a copy of them.
Yeah, absolutely can.
Yeah.
Because I'm now clicking through this on my screen, but it doesn't appear to be moving. Or has it moved? Actually, everybody,
Yes.
has it moved? I think,
Yes.
I think it looks slightly weird from what I think you guys can see, but I think we may have the main bit of it on. Yeah. Okay, so hopefully you will shortly see a slide that says developing staff.
That looks good, Charlie. Thank you.
Okay, it's not presented exactly how I think it should be, but I'm going to leave it there because I think people can see it. So yeah, somebody said we can see the presenter's view. I know you can, but I don't actually want to touch that and break it now. So I think we'll just go with the presenter view if that's all right with everyone.
Yep, fine by me. Thanks, Caroline. Thanks, Charlie. So I'm just going to talk for a few minutes about developing staff. Research has shown, even back as far as 2016, just did a report, and they found that learners' digital experiences were strongly influenced by the confidence and capabilities of their teachers, which I think really sums up what we're trying to focus on. So the benefits of developing staff digital capabilities, first and foremost, is learner upskilling. And our confidence when we teach digitally helps give our learners confidence and helps reduce the barriers to digital isolation that some may be experiencing. And it's also got benefits in terms of staff retention and obviously critically continuity in the event of restrictions, and continuity both for us as staff, also our learners and organisation as a whole. So since the spring, we're now beginning to move from our emergency response, our crisis mode, to meaningful long-term change in how we develop our skills in terms of digital teaching. So some of those long-term changes are around pedagogy, the way that now we're actually designing learning through technology. It's also to do with our role that now teachers are guides and facilitators of peer learning, moving away from an instructor role, and also our modes of delivery, where blended, flipped and asynchronous learning is now a permanent feature of our educational landscape. If I could have the next slide.
I have clicked to ask for the next slide, but it doesn't currently appear to be moving.
That's okay, I can talk through it anyway, it's no problem. So I'm just going to give you a sort of three-step guide to give you some ideas about developing staff. So the first step, which you might just be able to see on the right-hand side of the presenter view, is about acknowledging the learning process, and that's step one. So in terms of acknowledging the learning process, oh, there it is, lovely, thank you. It's all about reassuring, it's about building confidence, and whether this is for you or for your staff, that's really the key element of this. It's recognition that everyone has different starting points, and that when you move out of your comfort zone with digital teaching, you need to do it one toe at a time. You don't just leap in, you can do it gradually, and that's absolutely fine. It's a process. It's also about us acknowledging frustration barriers, and those barriers might exist due to experience, due to skills and equipment, but also there are frustration barriers around confidence and also motivation, and it's very difficult to do something that you don't want to do. And obviously we've all been thrust into this digital teaching world with very little preparation and at high speed, and so there are numerous barriers that staff can face. In terms of how staff actually progress with their skills, there's a sort of picture at the bottom there just to give you a way of thinking about it. And what I've done is I've just shown it as adopting, exploring and embedding. And on the left hand side, which I know will be a little bit tricky to read, but I've just put some examples there of communication, resources, assessment and feedback. And the reason I put that there is just to try and show a sort of roadmap for how skills can develop with staff, and also to highlight that you can have a very spiky profile. So a tutor who might be really, really strong and have embedded communication skills and be using live streams, blogs and podcasts may actually be just at the adopting stage of providing feedback and just be typing feedback digitally. So it's just to recognise that people aren't always great at everything, and actually you can be great at one thing but actually have quite be back at the adopting stage in other areas. So step 2 is about using the tools that you have available. And luckily, you have absolutely loads of tools at your disposal, as well as obviously the work that the Digital ACE project is providing is one of those tools. Using the tools you've got available is about leveraging your strengths. So as an organisation, you're trying to identify your pocket experts. Where are the people in your organisation who have embedded some of those skills on the previous slide? Those people are your digital champions, your coaches, your mentors for very specific skill areas. A very important aspect of using the tools you have available is to define your own best practice and provide training and guidance that is specific to the technology that you're using. So if you're using Google or Microsoft or any of the other plethora of VLEs and so on, you need to define what processes you want staff to follow, because it gives comfort if there's one system, and it means that the transition into becoming expert is a lot smoother. Secondary to that is sharing good practice and finding great examples within your teams that you can then share to inspire others. And lastly, but possibly most importantly, is to make use of free CPD. I've given a couple of examples there. FutureLearn, Open University and the Enhanced Digital Teaching Platform are all excellent. And in terms of digital pedagogy, they provide some absolutely superb resources at no cost. And underpinning all of that, we're all familiar with the KISS acronym, I'm sure. It's a case of keeping it simple. Start with something that works well, that you feel comfortable with, and then expand out as the confidence increases. And last step is building support networks. And this step really is about creating a digital culture. And if you want to create a culture of technology within your teams or your organisation, it's about modelling best practice all the way through to infuse and inspire staff and learners. And it helps people to be inspired to actually embrace the opportunities that digital learning offers, rather than getting bogged down in the frustrations of technological issues. Encouraging peer support through formal and informal channels is really important, sharing knowledge within teams, within the organisation and within the wider FE community. And finally, oh, lovely, it's nice and big now. And finally, supporting learners. So supporting tutors by supporting learners. If you reduce the burden on tutors with robust learner support induction, which I know Carol will talk about a little bit later, that can make tutors feel more comfortable and feel that they are not also suddenly having to add IT support into their skill set. Although obviously the more confident they are with technology, that confidence will impact the learner experience, as we saw up front. So a couple of practical steps just to leave you with. Create a VLE for tutors if you don't already have one, a place where tutors can ask for ideas, share resources and seek help from those digital champions. Seek out and celebrate your success stories and share resources and share inspiration as widely as you possibly can. Share. And lastly, identify those digital champions and use them. Don't look for one digital champion, find many and use them to support other members of the organisation. I'll hand back to Caroline. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much, Sarah. That was a wonderful whiz through the experience that Sarah's had. And I'd have to say that when we had our final working group meeting, we changed some of the content because of the feedback that Sarah and other colleagues had from the process of developing staff over the summer as the sort of dust had settled and they were trying to move things forward. And that was why I really thought that Sarah would add some value. So thank you ever so much. Another thing I just wanted to touch on, really, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but is that some services have established a helpline to answer the key questions for staff and or their learners. It could be technical, or it could be things like access codes for sessions, or they're not quite sure how to do something like opening a Word document, or they're not quite sure how to connect to their Zoom call, and so on. But one of the bits of feedback that came through, particularly from the post-summer activity that managers had engaged in, was that tutors were feeding back very much that they were being expected not just to be a subject expert, but to be an IT expert, and that actually that was sometimes putting them off doing things like Zoom sessions and so on, because they're not technical experts. They're learning as they go along, and it was undermining some confidence. So having some form of helpline available can be a really, really powerful tool. So next slide, please, Charlie. So when I was working on this, I discovered that Bolton College had done a project to introduce a chatbot to support their online help facility. And I thought this was very interesting. And there is a link to that Bolton College project. But I did also think about, before I retired, in Newcastle, the sort of digital innovation team were developing chatbots for the local authority, although not for my service. And when I looked at it a bit more, I was researching it, and it seems that developing a chatbot is actually not that difficult to do. And what the feedback I've had from the person who developed them at Newcastle is that it has really helped to up the numbers of people and the frequency that people go to the FAQs in the areas that they have introduced them. So it seemed to me that given that a lot of these queries that your helplines will have are likely to be fairly similar to one another, it might be something that you would be interested in considering, and might be useful to take some of the pressure off your staff and to reduce the costs of running a helpline, because I think all of us will be aware that at the moment funding is tricky. And we're already a sector under pressure financially. So I've got another poll here for you, just to see what you feel about whether chatbots might be an interesting way forward to help to increase access to your FAQs.
Okay, so I'm just launching Caroline's second poll. So do you think a chatbot might be useful for your service? We've got yes, definitely, yes, possibly, no, or I don't know. If you could tick one of those answers, that would be fabulous, thank you. And just while you're voting, I'm going to say thank you to Eduardo, who gave me the technical tip on how to display the slides slightly better than I had them displayed before. I was scared to touch anything in case we lost everything at that point. Okay, so we've got 79% of you have voted, so I'm going to close the poll and I will display the answers for you. Yeah, I don't know if you can see the answers there. I'm not sure that you can. The poll results, oh, you can? Okay, I can't on my screen, but that's fine. So poll results, so 49% of you said yes, possibly, 23% of you said yes, definitely, 8% said no, and 20% of you don't know. So yeah, about, what have we got? 75% of you approximately think that they could be something that's useful for you.
Well, that's really interesting. Thank you, everybody, because I thought that it might be one of the useful follow-on workshop sessions. So that sort of confirmed that for me. Charlie, can I check that Carol has made it to us?
Last time I looked, she hadn't, so I'm just going to confirm. No, I don't have her in my list of panelists, so unless she's dialed in on the wrong link, if she's dialed in the wrong link, we may not be able to get her. I don't think she's here.
Okay, right. In which case, if we skip past Carol's input.
Yeah. Can I just check, Caroline, can you see the front slide at the moment, or can you see the chatbot slide? You can still see the chatbots?
No, I can see the front slide.
Okay, I'm not entirely sure why you can see that, so just bear with me a second.
I think you'll need to go back into presenter view.
Oh, maybe, I think it might have stopped it because we did the poll.
Yeah.
Just 1 second, sorry everybody.
Sorry, this is a consequence of my nightmare that I had earlier on, which Charlie and I found out really largely by chance because we had a Zoom catch up and it started to emerge there. So I've had to bring my husband's computer upstairs and send everything to that and so on.
And I'm now doing the very technical way of clicking through every slide to get back to where we were. Sorry, everybody.
Carol unfortunately got called away to an emergency meeting and had hoped that she would be here by now. Hopefully we can, it was the slide before I wanted, Charlie.
Okay, 1 second.
So Carol, yes, Poplet. So hopefully Carol's going to get here before the end of the session to be able to do her input. So I've tried to use some of the resources that we've put links into. And so I have summarized the information on blended learning using Poplet, which is one of the apps that allows you to, as you can see, create a variety of types of diagram. So I'm not going to, again, not going to spend a long time on here, but it helps you to develop a visualization. This one is about blended learning. And once again, it's about saying there's no right answer to this. In the materials, you'll find that there are information about possible blended learning models that you might be interested in looking at, using, adapting, developing, and so on. Some approaches, synchronous, asynchronous, flipped classrooms, and so on. Have to say, it seems to me that blended learning really lends itself to that sort of flipped classroom model. Some considerations that you might want to take into account when you are looking at how you design that blended learning. So things like how intuitive the software might be for the learners, whether the learners have got access to the right equipment, to the internet, you know, are they experiencing digital poverty, their attitudes to learning online and blended learning, how the staff feel about it. So there's a whole set of ingredients that you need to consider before you come to the right answer for you and your service. And then there's some practical points in there. So considering things about staff and learner vulnerability might influence how much of the program is delivered online, the location of your buildings, the layout, the space, safe travel. One of the group reported that learners were saying, I'm not prepared to go one stop on the bus. to come into a learning centre, and all of those sorts of things, the sort of anxiety levels that staff and learners might experience, and also local and national spikes in COVID-19. And as you will, I'm sure, all be aware, huge swathes of the country are now in sort of local lockdowns, including ourselves out in rural Northumberland. So it's interesting times. So hopefully there's some useful resources in there and materials in there for you. Okay, next slide. Thanks, Charlie. So we've also looked at video conferencing, not really at specific platforms. The principles of what you need to do, whether you're using Zoom, Google Meet, Teams, Big Blue Button, GoToWebinar, WebEx, whatever it is you're using, the principles are fundamentally the same. And so rather than focus on individual platforms, although there are links to materials about individual platforms, what we've really focused on is what are the points to consider when you're delivering using those platforms, and what facilities do you want the platform to have, and which ones are you going to use? So really that's where we've focused in terms of video conferencing. Next slide, please. So this next slide I've created using some software called Widgets. And Widgets, for those of you who haven't come across it, is designed for people with limited communication skills. In my service in Newcastle, before I retired, we had used them for a couple of years to create resources and materials and worksheets, and for the learners to be able to respond, particularly learners with learning difficulties, but it can be used in areas like ESOL and very low level English skills and so on. So anywhere where you've got learners with challenging communication skills. And they absolutely loved it. So I've included something from that with really a slightly cautionary note, which is that in the materials, in the links to lots of materials and resources for ESOL and for lots of other areas, one of the things that we wanted to highlight and emphasize is that you do need to be careful using worksheets and quizzes. And I know you'll know this, but there is sometimes a temptation to use them just to fill in time. And it's one of the things that Ofsted have been particularly concerned about, I think, in terms of pre-lockdown in classrooms. You know, is there a real purpose to the materials? Do they build on previous knowledge? Do they take the learners forward? It needs to be the same online. The principles are identical. So it was just really to say, using something that was a little bit fun, using widgets, just be careful when you're selecting those worksheets and quizzes or developing them, that they have a real purpose in your and progress your learners. Okay, so next slide, please. So obviously we've got relatively limited time in the webinar, and as I said, this was going to be and is going to be a huge gallop through the materials. We at the moment haven't looked at using videos and YouTube, collaborative tools, although I've illustrated some collaborative tools, but I haven't used them, feedback and feed forward, and the additional information and resources, other than just make sure that you use them quite carefully. But those will be included in further workshop sessions that we've got planned to deliver. can I just check, has Carol arrived, or are we?
No, I don't believe so. She's not showing up as a panelist, and I couldn't see her name in the other list, so I don't think she's. I just think she's not here, probably.
Okay, so clearly the meeting she was called to, unfortunately, has possibly gone on much longer than she had hoped for. But we'll make sure that all of that material is encapsulated, because what she was going to talk about was her feedback about learner induction and what staff and learners had felt about that. That is included in the materials, an outline of it, and that we also plan to run a full workshop. So hopefully you can pick that up in the full workshop. I'm just going to hand back over to Charlie in a moment. The next section is actually a very quick video, which I've pulled together using some software called Bytable. Now, Bytables is a piece of software that we allowed to use in the council. They had a subscription to it, and we produced lots of videos using it. It's incredibly easy to produce very simple videos, either incorporating your own video clips, photographs, or the animations that are within it. And this is going to give you our top 10 tips. I hope Charlie's going to be able to get it running. She has tested it out, so it should work.
Caroline, I have tested it, but it worked when I did it before, and currently I think I can just see that weird blank square of a screen that you could see last time.
Oh.
So whilst it worked when I shared it in the test run and didn't work when Caroline did it, oh, hang on, no, it may be that it's now gone into a black. Oh no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to just press play and hope. Okay, Caroline, you'll need to unmute yourself. I think it will have automatically muted you.
Okay.
Oh no, you're not. You're fine.
Can you hear me? No, it's fine.
Okay, somebody did tell me that played fine for the audience, so I'm hoping most people could see it.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Okay, so we do need the slides back. Sorry, Charlie. You'll have noted, I hope, that one of those top 10 tips was to have a plan B in case everything goes pear-shaped. And as you can see, some things went pear-shaped for us today, and we had to create a plan B. And it might not have been perfect because I thought I was sending on to my husband from my phone the right set of slides, because my laptop was in the process of doing some 2-hour update that it just went into and wouldn't come out of. So we've had to bring my husband's computer upstairs and send everything to that. But it was a plan B, and it meant that we got through it. And it's a lesson that I learned, oh my goodness, back in 1987, when I was presenting to the Association of Colleges National Conference about technology, and everything went wrong for me and the person I was sharing the presentation with about 2 minutes before all of the principals and chairs of governors walked into the room. But we got there and we resolved it. And I think in some ways it's quite helpful to see things go wrong, and then you just have to work around them and just accept that when you're using technology, sometimes it's not perfect.
We did it on purpose, didn't we, Caroline, just to demonstrate that things do go wrong sometimes. So yeah.
Yes, yeah. But fortunately, we found out before we started the webinar, not as we were trying to start it. So never mind. There we go. So a little bit more information about how to use the guidance materials. So this is what you will get. Sorry, I'm just trying to line it up. I'm not very good at showing things. You will get some guidance materials that will look roughly like this at the front, and you will see that there's a table of contents. Those are all clickable links, so you don't need to read through everything. And when you go into them, you will find that there is information. Sorry, I'm not very good at lining things up in reverse. That there are breakout boxes that show you, you know, key bits of information. There are also lots of links which are fully working hyperlinks that you can just click and it go, yeah, that's interesting. No, that's not interesting to me. So hopefully that you will find those useful. And in addition, there'll be a whole range of annexes that people have shared, which are their resources that, like I said at the beginning, they're happy for you to use and to share.
And that will all be uploaded, sorry, that will all be uploaded onto our website once we've signed off the absolute final version. So you'll be able to get at the main document, and you'll be able to click to download each of the individual annexes, which, as Caroline said, is you'll be able to get at each of those and edit them to suit yourselves if you need to. Sorry, Caroline, I jumped in on you there.
No, that's fine. So I hope you find that useful. My advice to you would be, don't start at page 1 and read through to page whatever, 30 or whatever. That would not be my advice. My advice would be to skim through, have a look, say, yeah, that's interesting, that's not interesting, right, not bothered about that bit, but actually this bit I am interested in, and just pick out the things that are useful for you and see whether any of the ideas and advice, any of the further information, reading, videos, the annexes or the case studies are helpful to you. If they are, that's fantastic. If they're not, then you know, I'm really sorry. I hope they are useful to you. There will be a whole program of training sessions to follow up to get more detail about those areas that you need to. We've got some useful resources which are on the next slide, but I'm not going to linger on that slide. But the following slide is my set of thank yous, and this was my wonderful group who, as I say, gave us fantastic feedback and support. And I'm about 3 minutes over with our technical glitches, so hopefully not too bad. And we're into any questions. So I'm going to hand back to Aranola or Charlie.
I'll bring Aranola back in so Aranola can field questions. If anybody's got questions, if you want to them, lots of the questions have been about whether or not you will get the guidance materials and the slides. And yes, absolutely. Hopefully by the end of this week, we'll be able to send out slides and guidance materials, and it'll all be up on the website, which is www.holex.org.uk. So once it's on there, you'll be able to get at the information from this strand and from the other strands, which will follow shortly after each webinar. So Aranola, you should be unmuted now. I'll bring Sarah back in as well, just in case we've got any questions. So yeah, if anybody's got any questions, please feel free to fire them over to me via the question panel. But I'll hand you back to Aranola. We've only got about 11 minutes, I think.
Thank you, Charlie. And thank you, Caroline and Sarah, for that It's a shame that Carol couldn't join us, but we will share the resources that she was going to share, and as part of the guidance, I think there will be links in there that relate to that. I think it's really clear from that, presentation, and it was, you weren't kidding when you said it's going to be a gallop through. It was clearly a gallop through. I was sort of scribbling as I went along, saying, oh, actually, you must remember to have a look at that and share those tips. I've certainly picked up some tips to actually take away. I think one of the things that's sort of coming out to me from this work that we're doing is that it looks like we're starting to build a community of practice for adults and community education around this, and it's going to be something that really strengthens us as a sector as we move forward on this agenda. And I think the key thing is for everyone to remember that you don't have to go it alone. There's so much support out there. And actually, one of the unique things about our sector is that we're so happy to share, and that's what's been so generous about this work that's actually taken place here. So there was one question that did come through prior to the webinar, and it was really, will this be the same as digital pedagogies, was the question. And I sort of gave this some thought, and I'll ask Sarah and Caroline to chip in as well. And I just think the good pedagogical principles that apply to any kind of teaching would apply the same way, in the same way, to digital. And it's really about you thinking through, well, who is this for? What are you looking to achieve? And that will determine the digital resources that you should be using. And it's really about thinking about using your digital tools thoughtfully, more than anything else. But that was my thought when I actually looked at it. It is similar, and it's all part of that same picture. I don't know if Caroline and Sarah have anything to add to that.
Sarah, you go first. I've talked a lot.
Yeah, I can't really add much to that, except just to agree that absolutely now technology, we're using it to actually design learning rather than just using it as an add-on. Using flashy tools is not the basis. It all comes down to what our learners need to learn and how can we do that in the most effective way. And there's no problem with actually having minimal technology in your digital classroom. You can absolutely just keep it to the basics and the learning will still happen.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Sarah.
I think that's an incredibly important point, actually. And if you think about it, Ofsted have not gone and said, oh, because you've moved to digital learning, we're going to look at something different. The inspection framework, as I hope everybody knows, is all about learning. It's all about what have the learners gained? Have they got deep learning? And I think you have to ask yourselves exactly the same questions about blended and online learning as you do about ordinary learning. You might just be delivering it slightly differently. And the learning for you is what works and what doesn't. And what works for person A may not work for person B. Surprise, surprise, because in a face-to-face classroom, that's true. So why would it be any different in a virtual classroom? Which is why I think one of the key messages is there's no right answer. It all depends on that cocktail of things about what you've got, what you've done previously, what your learners feel like, what your local scenario is. Yeah, I don't think there's a right
great.
answer.
I've got a couple of questions come in, so I'm going to fire a couple of quick ones over. Emma Ward says, which is the most popular online teaching platform? That might come out in one of our other sessions, but has anybody got an instant answer to that?
Not instantly.
We might say look at our underpinning technology session on that. That will give you some more thoughts on that one. And Esther Oddy says, I'm leading on a new remote blended delivery webpage at Good Things Foundation, and we'll be linking the resources, which is great. Just someone said, can you remind us where to get the guidance notes from? So anybody who's signed up to this webinar, I will send them out to both the HOLEX e-group, and if you're not on our e-group, don't worry, because I will work that out and send you the resources, and they will also be on our website as well. I have another one. Mark Townsend said, have you got any thoughts regarding the best practice or preferred digital professional development plans, e.g. self-development or workforce plans or other? Has that come up in any of the work we've done?
Not specifically, because it wasn't something we specifically focused on. However, Sarah alluded to those online programs that are available to support your staff to learn to teach in an online world, and there are links to all of those in the materials. And I think that probably it will be a focus of one of the workshops is, you know, looking at what work, you know, at online learning. But again, because I think there's not one right answer, I think it's actually quite difficult. I think it's about the principles rather than the detail, which I know is a very vague, woolly answer, but I'm not sure it's mature enough to be able to give you that. And because every scenario is different, I think that's challenging too.
The only thing I would add is that, you know, you need to look at it from the organizational perspective as well, in terms of what's right for your organization, because it's a combination of things. You need to really have a clear understanding of what your organizational infrastructure is and how that will support staff, because actually there's no point in actually sending out staff off to go and do WYSI CPD, and then when they come back, actually you don't have the infrastructure and the, you know, kit and the equipment to actually support the delivery with that. That is just so frustrating. So you do need to take a whole organizational approach to it when you're actually looking at, you know, which platform or which CPD program you want to align for your staff.
Yeah, brilliant. So a couple more quick ones, and I think we need to wind up. So, oh, sorry, it's just jumped. Somebody else has asked a question. So Denise has asked about tips for reaching learners with difficulty accessing online learning initially. So I would say, Denise, on that one specifically, unless these guys want to add anything, we've got a strand on low skilled learners. So if you look out for the webinar on that, I think that's the best answer to that one. And Julia's asked, how do we link to further webinars? So if you look out for emails via the HOLEX e-group, then it's got the links of how to sign up. So if you don't get those directly, if you just speak to somebody who, the head of service or somebody in the senior team who will be on it, they can forward that on to you. And I think that's all the questions.
I think also as well, Charlie, worth saying that
Was that Caroline?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Also just worth saying that you're absolutely right that some of this is stuff that will come through on the underpinning infrastructure stuff, which I've been working on as well. So there's quite a linkage there, but there is a bit of a demarcation between here are the things that you might use, and this is the underpinning stuff. So there's some more stuff in the material in the underpinning technologies, which is much late. It's in November, I think, early November, so. the webinar for that.
Brilliant. So I'm just going to mention quickly that we are in the near future going to release a prospectus that has got a number of training sessions. So for each of the strands, we've identified a number of areas that we're going to go into a bit more deeply. So if you just watch out for that, the details of the prospectus will be coming out fairly soon with links as to how you sign your staff up for that. And there will also be the advisory sessions that we've talked about, where you can request an advisory session for someone to come and have a look at what you're doing and how you could potentially improve that in certain areas. And as I said, if you check out the Digital ACE page of our website, the resources will be uploaded there as and when they're available. I think that's probably it from me, just to say thank you to everybody. When we close out from the webinar, you will get a feedback thing come up. If you can just answer that. 1 is the lowest score, 5 is the highest score. Just remember that when you're responding. It does say, but I think some people don't always read it. So Aranola, do you want to do a quick wind up for us?
Just quick wind up. So, you know, this work is continuing, absolutely essential for our new way of working and for supporting our learners. Engage with it, and I think from what we've seen from this webinar, you are all absolutely committed to that, and I think we just need to actually see how all the other webinars develop. But thank you all for participating. Thank you for the questions that you've sent through. We'll continue to actually work as a great community of practice in this area, and it just looks like the sector can only be strengthened through this work that we're doing. So thank you, and thank you Caroline, Sarah, and to Carol, even though she couldn't make it, for the work and input that you've put into this strand. Thank you, and have a lovely day, the rest of you, and take care wherever you are. Bye now.
Thanks all. Bye.
Thanks, Charlie.
Bye.